can all see and hear me and see the slides on the screen. So welcome to our webinar on SAP Basis. So this should be a really interesting and informative session today. Can't wait to get started. So for a bit of context, my name's Lucy Hart. I work in the marketing team here at the config team. So don't worry, I won't be talking to you for too long. I'll be handing over to the experts very shortly. So just a bit of housekeeping before we go in. Our Basis session today will last around 25 to 30 minutes, which will leave around 10 to 15 minutes for our Q&A session at the end. Questions can be put to the team via the question option, which you should see on your screen, and I'll make sure we get through as many as possible. Presentation and the Q&A session are both going to be recorded, and we'll get those sent out to you within the next couple of days. So without further ado, let's go through the agenda for today. So first of all, we'll be going through our speakers so they can give you all a short introduction on who they are, what they do. And then AJ and Andy, who are our Basis consultants here, will be taking you through an overview of Basis to get you all familiar with its key concepts, then diving a bit deeper into Basis roles in things like day-to-day operations, projects, as well as typical tasks that a Basis team would perform. And then we couldn't possibly talk about what good looks like until you know what the opposite of that is. So we'll be taking you through what happens when you don't have an efficient Basis team working for you, and then how that would affect your business, colleagues, customers. Then we'll move on to what good looks like. We'll give you our insights on SAP best practice that's going to give you a really good idea of what you should expect from your Basis service provider or your internal team. Then it'll be time for our Q&A session where we'll open up the floor for questions from you all, and we'll do our best to answer as many as possible. So remember, you can raise a question at any time throughout this presentation. If one springs to mind, you don't want to forget it, and we'll get to it at the Q&A session. So I'm now going to hand you over to our speakers so they can introduce themselves to you all. And I hope you enjoy the webinar, everyone. I'll be back with you for the Q&A session. Thanks, AJ.
Thank you, Lucy. Good morning and welcome. My name is AJ Sharman. I manage the Basis team at TCT. I have 22 years of Basis experience. I mainly worked within retail, manufacturing and engineering sectors, and have worked both in consulting and end user roles, both in project delivery and support.
Morning, welcome everybody. My name is Andy Bailey. I am the SAP Basis support team lead for the config team. I have around 12 years experience in the Basis industry, mostly in the retail industries, but a little bit of government industry as well. Thank you.
Thanks, Andy. Good morning, everybody. My name is Mike Nicklin, and I'm the SAP Support Sales Manager here at the config team. I've been working in and around SAP for around about 20 years. Most of my career as an end user of SAP, but more recently in consulting.
Good morning, everybody. My name's Will Dunkley. I'm part of the Security and Authorizations team here at TCT. I've got 17 years experience in SAP security, and that's been in industry sectors including defense, banking, tobacco, pharmaceuticals, and facilities. I'll be mostly in the background today just in case any security and authorizations questions come up. And with that, I'll hand you back to Mike. Thanks, Mike.
Thanks, Will. So yeah, I'm really looking forward to our Basis session this morning. But firstly, I'm aware that some of you may not know too much about the config team, so I'm going to give a brief introduction. Our business is summarized by the triangle that you can see there on the left-hand side of the screen. So we offer traditional SAP consultancy, we offer support contracts, and we offer innovative software solutions. Since 1994, we have been an independent SAP consultancy, and our founder, Andrew Moses, is now our managing director and still involved in the business on a daily basis. We work very closely with SAP. We are gold partners, and the products that we offer are all SAP certified. More certifications, we are fully accredited with ISO 27001 and ISO 9001. We now have more than 170 people in our team, the majority of which are based in the UK, However, we do have an office in Melbourne, Australia, with around 15 colleagues down under. Although predominantly based in the UK, we do have almost 100 customers, active customers, that we are working with around the world. We have a product development team working on products designed to make SAP easier to use. And we offer 24-hour support through our support help desk, SAP Support Help Desk. Finally, through our consulting and customer success teams, we form true customer partnerships with the aim of becoming an extension of your own team and part of your team. So with that brief introduction to TCT, I will hand back over to AJ.
Thanks, Mike. What is SAP Basis? SAP Basis is a technical infrastructure that underpins all SAP applications. It acts as the middleware between the operating system, database, and the SAP application. The Basis component is vital and serves as the foundation for all SAP systems. The Basis team handles the behind-the-scene tasks that keep the company's SAP systems running smoothly. It involves tasks such as installing and configuring the SAP system and database administration, and system monitoring. The Basis team makes sure that everything is in place for the SAP system to function properly. If SAP was a car, the engine would be considered the Basis component. You can have a really good looking car, the best entertainment system, the best set of wheels. However, without a functioning and running engine, you would not be able to drive the car and get anywhere. Without the Basis team, the company's SAP system would struggle to function effectively, impacting the overall productivity and efficiency of the organizations. The Basis role can be split up generally into two: delivery and projects, which would be classed as set pieces of work that are completed over periods of time, and BAU operations, which is ensuring that the system is running optimally on a day-to-day basis and being maintained. Project work could include the design, the sizing, and installation of new systems, or supporting new projects, for example, the business are introducing new functionality. System upgrades and system migrations would usually be classed as project activity, and BAU operation tasks would be monitoring, performance tuning, troubleshooting, and providing day-to-day support. Now, Basis support is far wider than just applying transport and stopping and starting the systems. Support tasks can vary from system monitoring, performance tuning, and it's vital that the monitoring covers infrastructure, the database, and the SAP application. Database administration tasks would also be classed as operational tasks, and depending on the database used, the administration tasks would vary. Keeping the systems maintained should be considered a support role. This should include the operating system, the database, and the back-end SAP system and SAP clients and tools used. Capacity planning is a critical activity for support. The support team would need to ensure that they are monitoring the growth and usage of the production and non-production systems so that they can proactively plan the increase or even decrease of any resources, minimizing any service impacts. Solution Manager is SAP's on-premise application lifecycle management tool. It can be used for many functions. However, Solution Manager can be used to allow you to automatically perform technical monitoring and even business process monitoring, which reduces manual checks. You also have the capability to create dashboards. So visually, you can view different metrics and statuses and aim the dashboards to specific audiences. Project consulting activities can vary from new implementations, the introduction of new systems or business functionality. Part of this could be designing the system to ensure that the business service level agreements are met. Upgrades and migrations are usually tasks which would fall under project activity. The example of this could be moving systems from on-premise data center to cloud, or moving from ECC to S4HANA, or upgrading S4HANA from 2020, for example, to 2022. I'll now pass you on to Andy, who will talk about issues that could arise if the Basis team are not working optimally.
Thanks, AJ. So what could happen if you don't have an effective basis team? I'm going to talk through a few of the topics on this slide. And to start with, let's look at poor system health. So if your SAP systems are not being managed effectively, where there is little or no proactive monitoring taking place, it can lead to overall poor system health. And when I talk about monitoring, I'm not just talking about SAP application monitoring. It should also include hardware, operating systems, databases as well. If housekeeping is not being performed regularly, this can have an effect not only on the database size, but overall system performance. And if issues are not being picked up in time, it can easily lead to service impacts. The issues I talk about here are not detecting failed jobs, potentially long-running jobs, longer-running transactions for end users, processes get consuming far more resource than actually required, and generally systems running slowly. Not only does it impact performance, but it also results in a poor user and customer experience. And if these issues remain undetected and not addressed quickly, it can potentially lead to periods of unplanned system downtime. Now, with system downtime, especially unplanned downtime, this can have multiple effects. One of them would be on costs. So, for example, in my experience working in the retail industry, if you have an SAP system that is your sole system to take in sales orders, if you have that system goes down for an hour, that's a lot of revenue lost. And that then has an impact on the customer relationships. So that forms a lack of trust, or you have unreliable systems, customers are less likely to return for custom. And then that has an impact on your brand. If you're having systems that are continually down or continually unavailable, it just leaves a kind of a bad taste in the customer's mouth. Those are external factors. It also has an impact on internal factors such as project backlog. So if you're continually having system outages, that means that your projects that are underway in all environments, not only production, so your development environment and your quality environment, all those projects are being put on hold while issues are being resolved. Another thing here is inconsistent SAP environments. So if changes are going through, i.e. fixes, patches, upgrades, database changes, and operating system changes, if they're not managed and planned correctly, it can lead to an inconsistent environment. Having inconsistent SAP environments makes it really hard to test and also really difficult to find the root cause and resolution to an issue. For example, you may have an issue that only appears in your quality system, not in your development or production system, meaning it can take a lot longer to find a proper resolution when fixing those incidents, because those problems cannot be replicated in other environments. So it's always key to have environments aligned and consistent all the time. Another thing here is acceptance of poor practice being considered the norm. So the basis role is to ensure that the systems retain their integrity and are governed properly. The basis team should be considered as one of, if not the gatekeeper to the SAP landscape. The ultimate aim is to protect the production landscape as well as all the other environments. The basis team should be encouraging best practices, not just across the basis team, but the wider SAP community. Some examples of poor practice, which I've seen in the past, things like not having clearly defined processes. Even something that's quite simple for a basis role is moving transport. So having a defined process from moving it from development to quality to production. Another thing is masking problems without really performing a full root cause analysis. A good example that I've often seen is where database space is continually filling up over time, and instead of really getting to that root cause, all that's done is more disk space is chucked at it or more RAM is chucked at it. What we really want to do is look at what's causing that disk to fill up. Is it a long-running process? Is it a long-running job that a user's running? Is it reports? Really get to the heart of the issue. Opening clients and allowing direct configuration. Now, this is a kind of a big no-no for any SAP environment. Yes, there are opportunities where it has to be done, but really all changes should be done through transports from development all the way to production. Segregation of duties. So making sure that the right people are doing the right things at the right time and not having the right authorization to, do everything they want. For example, a developer who creates a report or makes a change to a report shouldn't be the same person that puts that report into a production system. Not having defined testing or environment plans. So as I mentioned, there's lots of projects always kind of ongoing at any given time. So we want to make sure that there's a plan and then people are aware of what project is in what environment and at what point. And also having the right data in those environments. So if you know you're going to be doing real performance testing in a quality system, you want to have the best and most up-to-date production-like data in that system. And if some of those points that I kind of mentioned on this slide are not being addressed, it can lead to overall increase in operational costs, such as the procurement of unnecessary hardware, more storage, more memory, even to the extent of more servers. And that just builds technical debts, and accruing technical debt causes existing problems to get worse over time. And the longer that debt builds up, the more costly it becomes to rectify. Also, it has an effect on operational, resource costs, so people's time. They're spending more time firefighting issues or looking at reasons to why systems are always going down, rather than spending their time looking at innovation or new projects. So those are some of the things that are not can be done well, and how can we get around that? What can we do better? Next slide, please, AJ. So what does good look like? I'm going to talk through a few things here that should be done by a basis team at all times. First thing is regular engagements and interactions. So the basis team should not be hidden in the background. They should already be collaborating and working closely with other SAP teams, infrastructure teams, and should have regular contact with service management teams and the wider SAP community. A good basis team can articulate issues and risks, and because this creates awareness for any potential issues that are coming up, and therefore any funding or any planned downtime that's required for that can be agreed ahead of time, in time, and get the support by senior management. A good basis team would and should keep and continually update a risk register. And the key here is to remove that technical debt that I mentioned earlier from that register, not to add to it, and provide mitigations where possible. Adhering to SLAs. So all customers, clients will have their own SLAs, and it's the basis team responsibility, as well as other SAP teams, responsibility to make sure that SLAs are being met and highlight any constraints where those SLAs maybe couldn't be met, for example. Next is proactive monitoring. So with proactive monitoring, a good basis team would be aware of any potential issues before they've even arisen. And the aim really is to ensure that the SAP systems remain online with the minimum amount of unplanned outages. This is achieved by doing the daily checks that you should be doing and having Solution Manager alert you and have monitoring set up, ultimately so you can get to a quick and fast resolution for any issue that does arise over time. Reviewing of early watch reports. So an early watch report is a great tool for SAP Basis, but not just SAP Basis, it can be used for other SAP functional teams. It's a report that's generated from Solution Manager system, and it can be done for your production systems, but all other systems as well if you wish. But what it gives you an overall health check on your system. It can tell you things like incomplete business processes, SQL statements that are taking a long time, security issues around authorizations, parameters that need to be adjusted or are not correct. And it's a great way to visualize all the potential things you can fix, and you can, from that report, look at things in the next week that you need to fix, in the next month or the next 6 months. And it's a way you can then put that to the wider stakeholders to say, look, this is what we want to do, this is the plan, and these are based on this report. So it should always be reviewed on I'd say a monthly basis. As well as early watch reports, you should be reviewing the system performance. And with SAP now, there are some really good and useful tools that you can use to visualize performance, such as graphs and charts to highlight trends over a period of time. One example that I've always used and liked is the dialogue response time. So you can see how quickly it is for a user to access SAP, basically. And what that gives you is you can see that over a period of time, so over a month, over a year, and you can see it either going up, going down as a trend goes. What's good is that as well, if you've got that aligned with a release plan or a strategy of releases, you can kind of tie two things together. So for example, if you had a support pack release that went in 1 month and you can see that dialogue response time went dramatically down, you can kind of say, look, this is why we do support packs, because it helps the system performance. So that should always be a regular discussion point, and update ongoing issues or any open issues or things that can be improved. And lastly, what I'm going to talk about is disaster recovery and business continuity planning. So the Basis team are also responsible for the database administration activities, as AJ mentioned earlier. Part of that is to ensure that the SAP landscapes have successful backups in the event of a failure, whether that failure is hardware related or user related, but we want to make sure that that backup can be used to restore the system. And the Basis team should have well-documented procedures for disaster recovery. Those procedures should also fit nicely within the overall business continuity plan of the organization. And quite regularly, I'd say, well, not really regularly, but at least yearly, I think the Basis team should be pushing customers and stakeholders to execute a disaster recovery test, whether that be spinning up some fake systems so you can run through the disaster recovery plan, or even if it's a tabletop exercise where you've got everybody that's involved in that continuity plan all around the table, all go through the steps that's needed to be for the priority systems. And this really gives you an opportunity to fill any potential gaps that you've not kind of seen or not foreseen. And it really is a great, once you've done that, it gives you that kind of confidence that in a real life disaster recovery where people are kind of running around like headless chickens, you can really get to follow that plan and execute it well. And that is all for me, and I'll hand back to AJ. Thank you.
Thanks, Andy. Regular maintenance. There are many reasons why companies fail to keep environments maintained. A good Basis team should continue to be pushing and driving for regular maintenance and outlining the risks if not performed. Cost should not be the deciding factor for not upgrading or updating, as you're missing out on new features, improved processes and fixes. How much money and time do you spend on implementing fixes manually? Internal incidents are raised, which could end up with SAP. It takes time to troubleshoot these issues, not to add the time it takes to test and implement these individual fixes. Regular maintenance provides better stability, which reduces system errors, dumps, and slow-performing processes. It's important to keep your systems updated, as upgrades and updates contain security fixes, which protect you against threats. SAP do release security hotfixes on a monthly basis, and a good Basis team would also review critical security notes on a monthly basis and ensure that any critical fixes are applied if deemed relevant. Performing regular maintenance can reduce technical debt, as every update validates all your custom solutions. Skipping upgrades could mean a lot more overhead in badly written code. Not maintaining your environments does not mean that you're saving money. It means you could be spending in other areas. By keeping the SAP systems well maintained, the Basis team can minimize risks, maximize system availability, and support the organization's business goals effectively. A good Basis team should have an up-to-date maintenance plan, and it's key to own and drive this plan. All maintenance activities should be agreed and plotted for the entire year, ideally. The plan should include infrastructure components and should also contain non-production environments, which provides visibility when environments are available and not available. This information can be used then for wider project and release planning. Agreeing the plan can be time-consuming and can be challenging. Therefore, having input to the wider business release and environment strategy is key. Release planning. The Basis team should be feeding the Basis maintenance plan into the wider release and environment plan, aligning changes from various projects and BAU changes so that changes can be moved into fewer control windows provides a layer of governance and awareness, which results generally in smoother changes being implemented. The Basis team can help in managing dependencies, coordinating activities, and minimizing disruptions to ongoing business operations. By carefully planning and testing software releases before deployment, release planning helps ensure the stability of the SAP systems. A good basis team would be involved and be part of the release process, not only to ensure that the technical changes are made, but also to highlight any technical system dependencies or conflicts and provide a layer of technical governance. A good basis team should be collaborating with project managers and release managers and other stakeholders to help develop detailed plans. This includes defining the release timeline, coordinating downtime windows, sequencing the deployment activities, which should also include rollback plans just in case issues arise and you need to roll back. By actively participating in release planning activities, the basis team brings the technical expertise, system knowledge, and understanding of the organization's requirements to ensure that SAP releases are effectively planned, tested, deployed with minimal disruption, and provide maximum value for the business. Capacity planning is a key activity to ensure that the production and non-production systems have sufficient capacity to continue operating. In previous roles, I've made sure that capacity planning was covered at least each quarter, and especially before peak business periods, for example, Christmas or year ends, when you're expecting more volume. During these busy periods, most organizations would usually have a change freeze, so it's critical that capacity planning has been performed well in advance and any changes required are made well in advance of the change freeze. It's vital that capacity planning is not just restricted to how much storage or extra CPU memory is required, and it should also include and drive topics like housekeeping and archiving. The basis team have visibility and should be tracking database sizes, and table limits, and they should be looking out for trends, and adding or reducing capacity should be apparent, the reason, and understood, and should be made well in advance with no or minimized impact. When performing capacity planning, the basis team should factor any new business changes, any new warehouses, for example, new stores been introduced, new sites been introduced, and new functions been introduced. A topic which gets occasionally overlooked is archiving and housekeeping of data. The basis team should always be aware of fast-growing and large tables and should be housekeeping technical tables and advising the functional and management teams of tables that could be eligible and should be targeted for data archiving. By reducing the database size can mean that you reduce your system resources, which could mean reduced costs. Usually the larger your database, the more expensive and complex it becomes to run. And the bigger the database, the bigger the backups are. Backups run for longer, which means in an event of a recovery, the outage would be a lot longer as well. Other reasons to keep a lean production database is if you're refreshing non-production environments from production systems. You need to ensure that the systems that you're refreshing have the capacity to hold the production data. The refreshing of the environment should be included in an environment strategy, and it's key to ensure that this environment strategy is updated. A good basis team should have a good insight and provide valuable input to the organization's SAP environment strategy. This is more than how many systems you have within the landscape. It should cover the overall client and landscape strategy, transport paths, articulate the usage for each of the environments and how they're integrated. The strategy should also include a refresh policy and include system dependencies. For example, if you have an S/4HANA system and you also have a BW system, both environments should be refreshed, not just one. Documentation. Good basis teams should have good documentation. The documentation should span further than just high-level design documents outlining the SAP estate infrastructure. The documentation should include standard operating procedures, outlining steps to follow when performing specific maintenance activities, and steps to follow when the team are receiving alerts. These documents should be considered as living documents and should be kept up to date. Having these procedures ensures consistency and allows reduced risk of running steps incorrectly. Now, I did mention Solution Manager earlier. Another great use for Solution Manager is to store documentation. In previous projects, I've helped organizations use Solution Manager to be the backbone of an operational control center. This is where all alerts would centrally go into one destination. All received alerts would have an attached standing operating procedure link. Therefore, when the operator receives the alert, and this could be a technical alert, it could be a business process monitoring alert, it could be any alert, the operator has clear instructions and steps to follow to correct the issue, and if deemed critical or requires a subject matter expert to involve, provide the correct details for the team to contact. this concludes the main content of our presentation. The topics are areas that myself and Andy discussed at a very high level of what Basis Good likes. I'd like to thank you for your participation, and now pass you back to Lucy.
Thanks, AJ. Thanks, Andy, as well. That was absolutely great. So before we kick off the Q&A session, I'm going to briefly hand you over to Mike, who's going to talk you through an exclusive offer that we've got for anyone who's watching this webinar, either live or recorded. And then we'll be moving on to questions and answers. Thank you, Mike.
Thanks, Lucy. Yeah, so as Andy mentioned earlier on the what does good look like, SAP provide early watch reports, and often customers don't realise the full benefits that can be achieved by reviewing these reports on a regular basis. With that in mind, we'd like to offer a free early watch report review to 3 companies who have registered for this webinar. All you need to do is send us your early watch report. We will then conduct a comprehensive review and then arrange a follow-up review session completely free of charge, no obligation. So to be in with a chance of this free consultancy, please email marketing@theconfigteam.co.uk. You can see it on the screen there by the end of this week. So that's Friday, the 30th of June, 2023, and you'll be entered into a prize draw. Then next week, we'll be in touch with 3 winners, and we will share details of how to send your early watch reports over to us. Thanks, Lucy.
Thank you, Mike. So we've reached the Q&A part of the webinar now. So we've had a few come in already, but do remember to keep them coming in as we go, and we'll get through as many as we can. So if you're ready, I will start taking us through some of the questions that I've got up here. So this first question could probably be either one for AJ or Andy. So the attendee has already got a partner for their infrastructure, hosting, etc. So how would a Basis team, or how would yourselves work with, say, an infrastructure partner?
Andy, do you want me to take this?
Yeah, sure.
Yeah, so the SAP Basis team are responsible for the technical SAP platform. And I mentioned infrastructure quite a few times in the session, and it goes hand in hand. The Basis team should be working very closely with the infrastructure partner, and usually it's going to either be a different team or it's going to be a different organization supporting that, or a different partner supporting it. I've worked in multiple organizations where you have different partners supporting various components of your estate. And it's all about collaboration and working closely together, just how a Basis team would work with the functional team and the ABAP developers or the business. They work the same way with the infrastructure guys. And usually the Basis team should have a very good understanding of infrastructure, and they can speak the same language and articulate issues, and usually have a good understanding of the environment and work very closely with the Basis, with the infrastructure team. Yes, it's all about collaboration and working together, really. So it should be no different to working to a different team.
Excellent. So another one here. So I suppose a big question in the industry in general at the moment is regarding the move from ECC to S/4HANA. So this question, possibly more of a generalist question, but you might be able to pick up, it's how we can support them in the move from ECC to S4.
Okay, I can pick that up. So as an organization, the config team have helped many customers perform migrations from ECC to S4, and it's something we are more than happy and more than capable of getting involved with. So if you need any assistance with that or need us to do that for you, we can definitely get involved and provide that support required.
And also, I mean, as key to point out from a basis perspective, if you're already using HANA, the S4 component should be no different from a technical perspective. So from a business transformation perspective, it's totally different. However, from a technical perspective, yes, you're using Fiori, yes, you're using a HANA database, and you need to migrate probably to different hardware. But it's there's no real difference from a basis team if they're comfortable with those technical components. There is a big change on security and Fiori, which I'm sure I'm going to pass it on to Will now. Will, sorry to put you on the spot. Are you able to provide some details around the S&G side with S4 HANA?
Yeah, sure. And actually, thanks for catching it, because really the S&A part of a HANA migration needs to be captured right at the beginning of a migration project. And historically, a lot of customers have left that far too late. People talk about Fiori all the time because it's new and it's exciting, but before you even get to that point, there are significant changes to business process with S4 HANA. So, for example, consolidation of the general ledger, centralization of customer and vendor master data into the business partner application. And even in a best case scenario, that's going to need some fairly significant rework to your authorization roles to accommodate those changed business processes. On top of that, you've also got a lot of transaction codes and reports that are deprecated under S4 HANA, and they need to be replaced with their new equivalents. Some of those are Fiori, many of them are not. But again, even in that best case scenario, you've got a lot of chopping and changing of deprecated transaction codes. I say best case scenario because actually a significant majority of customers find that their existing authorizations concept just won't withstand the upgrade process to S4 HANA, and that becomes more likely the older that existing authorizations concept is. And so for a lot of customers, really the best solution is to use the opportunity for a complete authorization concept redesign, and then factor in the changed business processes, the changed transaction codes, and then start thinking about Fiori. We can certainly help anybody that is starting down that road, and the earlier the better. We can help you get a feel for whether you're able to migrate your roles or whether you might be looking at a role redesign.
Right.
Okay, sorry, to follow on from that. There is a really useful tool that SAP actually provide. It's called an S4 readiness check, and all that really involves is, again, getting your early watch report, applying a couple of SAP notes, sending that off to SAP, and they give you a fully comprehensive report on how you can migrate your existing kind of ECC landscape, whether that be you need to change data completely, can create it from scratch, so the whole blue field, brown field, green field solutions. So it's definitely worth looking into if that's kind of your plan for the future is to move to S4, the S4 readiness check. Thanks,
Cheers,
Lucy.
Andy. Cheers, Andy. Putting Will on the spot again, there's a question here that seems tailor-made for him. So Will, this is about security and governance, and I think I already know the beginning of this answer. Is system security and governance included in our basis activities?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, security, that's basically what we do. We provide the full spectrum of services for our customers, from user management all the way through, obviously, roles and authorizations management, and also to some degree a little bit of sort of wider system security, if you like, profile parameters, that kind of thing. Most of our customers will follow at least a sort of SOX, Sarbanes-Oxley level of compliance. We're able to work with them to achieve that, and in some cases help them to improve their governance as well.
That's great, thank you. So we have another one here. This is probably one for either AJ or Andy, and it relates to a point that was made, I think, on one of the previous slides about how regular maintenance was really important. I think you might have said that, Andy. So this person has lots of projects going on at the moment. They're finding they don't really have time for that regular maintenance. So in that case, what would you recommend?
Andy, would you like me to take this one?
Yeah, if you want to take that, AJ, that's fine, yeah.
Yeah. So in the presentation, I did talk about release planning, and it's a common challenge. You're always going to get pushback from projects saying, no, we want our change to go. You know, we're providing business benefit to the company. Our changes are far more important. And the best way of doing this really is combining the maintenance activity with the project. So the basis guys would do their maintenance activity first, and then the project would build their developments or their new functionality on top of the updates or upgrades. And then you package it all together. And that way, you also get cost savings in testing synergies, because you're doing one set of regression testing, one set of performance testing as well. So it's about, you know, getting ahead of the game, talking about release planning, and making sure that the basis team, you know, drive this maintenance plan and make sure it's in a release plan, and the whole business or the SAP teams all have visibility of this.
That's brilliant. Thank you, AJ. So we've got, I think, time for one more question here, and this one, it's to do with the early watch reports review offer. It's a question that's come in asking how they go about getting that report, so that could then be sent over.
Okay, I can take that one. So if you've got Solution Manager installed and configured, you should be getting early watch reports. So if you haven't, or you're not getting those reports, I would say speak to your basis provider currently to find out if they have got early watch reports and they're just not sending them on, or ask them to kind of create them for you. Obviously, if you need assistance in that, we are more than happy to help. If you want to fire us an email, we can kind of provide some assistance with that as well. Okay.
Perfect. Right, thank you, AJ, Andy, Will. That was really great. Thank you so much. If you just go to the next slide, please, AJ. I think that about wraps up our webinar. So if you have any questions that weren't covered today, feel free to get in touch with us, and we'll be happy to help you out in that regard. And just any further questions in general, just please do feel free to get in touch. So yeah, thank you so much for attending.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Bye.